The topic of the Paracas Candelabra, well, its beginnings were due to the fact that in 1982 we arrived with a research vessel with a team at the Paracas Reserve, and we got in touch with the founder of the reserve at that time, Felipe Benavides, president of the World Wildlife Fund in Peru and founder of the reserve. We were there working with him in this reserve that was just getting started, and we studied the Paracas Candelabra at that time. Those were the first studies. We were able to carry out a fairly comprehensive analysis back then, both on an archaeological and astronomical level, because it has an important astronomical context, and also in terms of symbolic interpretation, because it has a highly significant design. Benavides himself, Dr. Benavides, told me back then that they had found a pirate's burial near the Candelabra, because that area of Pisco, Paracas, along with the Chincha, Ballestas, and Sangayan Islands, had seen a lot of pirate activity, piracy during and after colonial times. And in that area near the Candelabra, a pirate's body was found. Many people said that upon finding the pirate's body, the candelabra must have been made by the pirates themselves to signify something, or perhaps to hide some of their treasure, etc. But anyway, these were just initial impressions that had nothing to do with reality. In the course of research, both archaeological and archaeoastronomical, we began to discover the first indications or realities of what that candelabra might actually mean. I studied it for a long time. We spent more than a year at the reserve collaborating with Dr. Benavides, but it actually took 3 years before we began to understand a bit of its meaning. In fact, the outline of the candelabra and its exact location are impressive. They are truly of absolute precision. It is oriented astronomically with absolute perfection towards the Southern Cross, which is the primary constellation, the most ancient or the most important one in the Southern Hemisphere, and also the most significant for all the peoples of the Latin American continent, where the main arm of the candelabra is perfectly aligned with the Southern Cross, as are its two lateral arms. That's when we realized that it had a very specific context and that we needed to approach the research from a different level of inquiry. Also, during the archaeological inspections we carried out, we found that the area where the candelabra is located is a highly saline terrain with a slope of about 40-something degrees, and this inclination causes it to point precisely in its... If you are out at sea from the maritime area, you see the candelabra pointing directly at the Southern Cross, and at its base, in its excavation, you notice that when it touches, is if we were to clear the candelabra of the sand that has accumulated over the years, because although we can see the lines, we don't see its original state. Well, if we reached its base, we would find the saline part of the terrain, and that saline part, which is a salt of a whitish yellow color, was polished, and this was the original state in which this geoglyph was found. What does this mean? Well, it means that the candelabra, optically speaking, from a nautical perspective, when you are sailing in those areas, coming by boat into the Bay of Pisco, Paracas, from quite a considerable distance, we have to, let's say that the salt with the sunlight reflects the rays perfectly, whereas the desert sand absorbs those rays, which creates a very distinct contrast. And from a ship, a nautical vessel, entering the bay from a long distance, I've even calculated that from almost 20 miles away, depending on the day as you enter the bay. You can see some reflections of this sign if it were in its original state. What I mean by this is that it would be very important to clean this candelabra, to restore it to how it was originally, and really see how it works from a nautical perspective. When we talk about precisely who actually built this magnificent candelabra, we really cannot definitively know, because we simply cannot accurately date it. We do know that it is very old. We do know that it existed before the arrival of the Spanish in 1532, and that it could be over 1,000 or 1,500 years old, but we don't know for sure. But the importance of its age is actually rather relative, because what really matters is who designed this, because the outline, the design shows a high level of intelligence. What do I mean by that? I mean that it has a nautical function. Yes, that's clear, because anyone sailing in the bay can see it. It has an astronomical function as well, which needs to be clarified because it is related to the constellation of the Southern Cross, which points to what is considered the mother constellation for all the peoples of South America. And it also serves as a sacred place, an original sacred center, as if its design is telling us that this is a sacred land. You arrive at a place where the candelabra, in its structure of three arms, two on the sides, and one central arm that is longer, has a base that is a rectangle with a circle in the middle, and the three arms are connected by a triangle with blades that are like a kind of, let's say, curves along all of its arms. The intricate design in its profound symbolic interpretation is clearly indicating to us a significant meaning toward a truly sacred place, a revered sacred center, a deeply hidden sacred center, or a hallowed sacred land. What do I mean by this? I mean that these symbols in ancient times were already described by Plato as well. There we have different accounts, not only in America. It is not an American symbol, it is not a sign, it is not a motif from the Andean or Mesoamerican cultures, but rather it is a universal symbol in which we find design patterns both in the European and the Indo-European regions. What I mean is that it is more directed toward the concept of a sacred tree, a tree of life, the tree of knowledge. That is the context it has. So in that sense, we are saying that the candelabra indicates the entrance to a sacred place. It is also said that this candelabra points to Nazca, to the Nazca lines. No, this is not true. This is because no one has properly studied that context. The candelabra does not point to Nazca, rather it points perfectly to the South Pole with absolute precision. And with Nazca, it has an angle of 40 something degrees, so it has nothing to do with it. Although it could be that the Nazca lines have some sort of connection with the sacred meaning of what the candelabra represents, but it doesn't point there. Instead, it points perfectly to the great constellation of the Southern Cross.